I'm very pleased to be here, and I have the pleasure of providing a little bit more of an introduction to my friend Thomas Kellner here. So, as was mentioned, he is from the Czech Republic, and while he could have become an engineer, because he comes from a family of only engineers, he decided, in fact, to become a world-renowned storyteller. And he spent the first part of his career in journalism at Forbes. He also took time to become an investigative investigating business.
Private eye.
Private eye. Not everyone can say that.
Yeah.
And in his downtime, he is a DJ, spinning vinyl under the DJ Disco Czech. So check that out. After launching and managing GE Reports at General Electric as their chief storyteller, he joined Amazon as the director of owned storytelling. And so my first question for you is, what does that entail? What does it entail in terms of being the director of owned storytelling, and is that a new role in the company?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for being such a great partner. So this is the second time, for me, this is the second time around the block. At GE, we built the corporate storytelling function. And what that means, we essentially replicated, or I replicated with my team, what we had at Forbes. So you build a newsroom inside a company because in this day and age, companies do not need to be mediated by others. They can tell their stories directly to their audience. Here at Amazon, it's slightly different. It's a much bigger company, if you believe it, compared to GE. And there is a really powerful existing publishing platform called About Amazon. So my role is to put together a publishing team. And what we do, we go around the company and look for AI stories. So that is my focus. Really, in this day and age, it's very relevant, very timely. So my creed is to learn something new every day, and I have to say, it's happening.
In AI, I imagine it has to be.
In short, we are corporate storytellers, are in-house publishers or journalists, if you will, media types.
All right. And why do you think storytelling is important in business? I mean, businesses have been around for a long time. Everyone knows Amazon. Why is storytelling important?
Storytelling is important in general. I mean, if you think about it, it is the oldest communication skill. I actually looked it up last night. So I wanted to know, when was the first writing invented or recorded? And it's 3,500, year 3,500 before BC in Sumeria. So we're talking about 5,000 years of writing. But before that, there was this oral tradition. And if we wanted to share information, important information, whether it's where we should hunt for food, or what places we should avoid, or who's a bad person or who's a good person, we told stories. And over the years, we've actually evolved these things in our brains called mirror neurons, and that allows us. That's why we cry in movies, and that's why we laugh, and that's how we can empathize with other people. And stories really allow you to do that. And I think if companies forget about the art of storytelling and instead start producing press releases, basically lists of numbers and made-up quotes, you're really missing an important opportunity to connect with your audience, be it your investors or be it your customers.
Mm-hmm. You and I were talking in the past, and we talked a lot about, I think, connection is really important, and stories do allow us to do that. And one of the things that we talk about in our business is, telling isn't selling. Just by telling a fact doesn't necessarily persuade somebody, but stories do. Stories engage. They make you feel things. They make you have emotion.
Fall in love.
Yes.
I mean, as you said.
Yeah, it's true. So what, in your mind, makes a good story?
So story, it's not, we are reinventing the wheel. I mean, story is a story and has the basic structure, unless you really go to something avant-garde and abstract. But the basic story needs a protagonist. It needs challenge. Then it needs some action, some moves and counter moves that the protagonist is doing to overcome obstacles that are in their way. And then you need an outcome. You will need to know sort of what happened. What happened at the end? And if you think about, and this is a story every day. It's like the reason why, many of you, I don't know what your backgrounds are, but I assume that you run companies or started companies or invest in companies. And the reasons why these companies are in business because they are solving someone else's problem. Customers are coming to you because they have a problem and you have a solution. So there is a story right away. That's the founding story of your company. But it's you just need these basic elements to really tell a good story. And I can tell you, they're everywhere. Once you start looking, they are in the newspaper stories that you read this morning. You daylight in some of the eldest stories that, Epic of Gilgamesh, if I can dredge it up. I actually read it last year with my kids because they had it, as a reading in school assigned. But you have all, religious texts. I mean, no one really tells a story about what Adam and Eve did in the Garden of Eden before, the serpent showed up, right? It's like no one cares. But the moment there is a conflict, there is a challenge, and they get to go out on their way, and things start happening, then you have a story. When you come home, the first thing that you say, oh, you won't believe what happened to me today. And out comes a story. You don't tell them, your partner, your friend, the whole day. Right. You start at a specific point. So that is a story.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's how people communicate most effectively. Even when we were talking about this, when one goes to the doctor, one tends to tell a story. On Saturday, I woke up, I wasn't feeling very well, I did this or that. And it's that connection that allows us to quickly and effectively communicate the needs. So you mentioned you can find these things anywhere. So we talk about finding nuggets or gems that we can hang on to and spin into a story. How do you do that? I mean, where is it just a constant trolling and what's in your mind when you are looking for those gems? And how do you talk to other people in the organization about equally being able to find those gems to turn into stories?
Several great points and several great questions in there. So first of all, I am employed by Amazon. So I tell Amazon stories. Amazon, just like any other company or any other successful company, I believe, has a strategy. It is something that you are trying to do, that you're trying to achieve, for your customers. The stories that we are trying to find, so we have that strategy and see what is it that we are trying to do. Then we start looking for stories that map out on a strategy. And it's specifically, what story can we tell that really illuminates and illustrates what the company is trying to do? Take AI. AI is just so abstract. I mean, it can mean many things. But so you have to bring it, make it more concrete. And so looking for examples, so we work with PR teams across the company. They're sort of our boots on the ground. So just like a magazine has reporters in the field or around the world, or used to have reporters around the world, stringers. So we work with PR teams and we have meetings every week. We have story team meetings just like we've had at Forbes, and basically say, what do you have? Like, what do you have? Do you have a good story? And then they come up with a story idea and we start pushing on it. I mean, is this real? Are these numbers for sure? Can we share them externally? And slowly a story starts to crystallize. And then you outline it and then you just kick the tires and then you just assign it to a reporter and you run with it. But again, the funny thing, Nanette, is that people tell stories, in their lives all the time. You do it all the time. But when they come to work, they really start thinking about like the press release terms, and there's a bunch of jargon that comes in. So what we do is how we sort of help to ease these stories out. We started these storytelling workshops that we take on the road. I mean, these days you don't really have to take it on the road because you have Zoom, or at Amazon we have Chime. We have our own. Yes. And so we do these storytelling workshops with our colleagues where we really tell them, do something similar to what we are doing over here. And that sort of having them, discover and see the structure actually helps you for them to pitch it to you.
All right. And do you, in doing that, do you change the story depending on your audience, whether it's investors, or do you try and tell the same story through a different lens?
So it's like that funnel, right, that they have in marketing that you guys know. So right now, the audience that we are really trying to talk to are tech elites, because specifically when it comes to AI, because they are the ones who are explaining what AI is and what it means and what it will mean for all of us. But there are many different audiences. You can pull back and you can start talking to the, the Gen Pop, the general population, which the tech elites are a subset. Let me tell you, so another way I sort of frame it, it's every time I meet someone and I interviewed someone, an AI scientist or a GE material scientist or, some person who builds jet engines, I tell them, imagine that you are talking to a really bright 16-year-old kid, that you went to your son's high school, and you need to, the problem that you are saying, just explain it to them, so when they walk away, they can actually repeat it to their friends. Mm. And that is actually a challenge. One of my favorite writers is Truman Capote, and when you read him, it's just so simple, that language, right? But you also know how hard he worked on it. So really bring it up, and that's asking the questions over and over again, sort of be okay with saying, I don't understand, I don't get it, can you explain it? And it's engineering, it's finance, it's all of the stuff that you guys, jargon exists for a reason, because it's a shorthand and we use it. I mean, there's in PR profession and marketing, but other people don't understand your jargon or my jargon. And so if you want to reach the audience of the millions, which we all do, I mean, that's the ultimate metric, is reach. We have to speak the language that the rest of the world speaks, not the language that we speak.
Right. I have that problem with my children. I do not understand their jargon. That's a whole
other
other story.
That's another issue.
It's another story. So, in terms of, other than Amazon, which companies do you think are great at telling stories? And does everyone, or should every company have a chief storyteller? Because your model's different, right? It's about taking something that exists and optimizing it for today to really engage people and get them to connect emotionally with your company.
Okay, let me start from the end, and then I'll get to the examples. So I do think that companies should have someone, a chief storyteller, if you will, someone who can help find these stories and tell these stories for several reasons. Because, as a part of the PR department, I can tell you as a former reporter, I would walk into my office, turn on my computer, and it would be like not millions, but it would be hundreds of press releases overnight. And I would just say delete, 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 delete. And I would keep the ones that I know. But story is different. Story is like the, press release is like the static on the radio. Remember radio? I mean, people still listen to it.
Vaguely, yeah.
But a story is, for a reporter, it's like you actually hit a channel. There's something, because reporters are tuned to find stories, to listen to stories. I mean, it's our profession, right? We produce stories, so we can't help ourselves to overhear a story. And so if you start telling a story as a company or as someone who's speaking on behalf of a company, you break through. You're breaking through to a reporter and actually pitching successfully a story to a reporter is much easier. The second thing is sort of engaging the audience. You want that. And who is good at storytelling? Historically, I really enjoyed what Microsoft has been doing. I haven't really looked at their site in a while, but they had something called Microsoft Stories, and I think that was really pioneering. What they did, they not only did they published stories, and they were good stories, but they're also experimenting with the format. So, they are a software company, so they can come up with a really amazing CMS. So the videos, the graphics, it was all very dynamic. So it was not just storytelling, telling stories, because there are many forms, right? We're technically, right now we're probably talking about text, but there is graphics, there's video, there's all kinds of other things that you could do to tell a story. So I would say them, but it doesn't have to be the big ones. I mean, I remember during COVID, on LinkedIn, I saw this story of some small healthcare service. I don't know exactly where they were based. It was in Pennsylvania or somewhere else. And they profiled a person who was cleaning the hospital, making sure that everything is disinfected. And at that point, it was probably one of the most dangerous jobs in America. And I thought it was really interesting. It was kind of a day in a life story. And I thought they did a really awesome job, and I actually reached out to that person and had a nice conversation. Not the employee, but the person who actually posted it and who produced it. Yeah. So it's large, big and large. Just don't be afraid, really, to tell these stories, because the investment is fairly low upfront, and it can pay back. Which brings me to you and actually to the marketing and advertising industry. A lot of these stories, that as you unearth them, these chief storytellers find them, serve as a substrate for a much larger project and much more expensive projects like TV advertising.
Advertising is not that expensive. Don't be fooled. No, but it's true. I think when we find those nuggets, it allows us to create incredibly meaningful platforms that can live for a long time. And a lot of what you're talking about right now, I think, is humanizing it, right? Humanizing the company, humanizing what they do, and why they do it. You and I have talked in the past, some of the things that we spend a lot of time doing for clients when they've run into challenges is going back to the creation story. Why was the company created? There was a mission, there was a problem, there was something they were trying to solve, and what does that look like today? And we have the privilege of working with some companies that have been around for a very long time, but times change. So how do you keep it relevant? But those nuggets that you're talking about are incredibly helpful for creating much bigger and not always expensive platforms.
That's true.
All right, so you and I were talking a little bit earlier because I was saying there's an American psychologist, Dr. Howard Gardner, and he posited the theory of multiple intelligences. And I thought it was really interesting because one of the things that he said is that stories constitute the single most powerful weapon in any leader's arsenal. And I wanted to get your perspective on that because that can be, as a leader, sometimes we're afraid to tell stories. We want to stick to the facts.
I think he's absolutely right. And I think great leaders, they know it. They tell stories. Great politicians know it. They tell stories. The story allows you to connect with your audience. It also allows you to show that you care and that you've done your homework. Like imagine if you're a CEO and you go, say you're based in New York and you go to Singapore or you go to New Delhi, and you can tell a story about something or someone that's been done in that location. Suddenly you win the hearts and minds of your audience, and it's really about making that connection. You can start speaking about something else right afterwards, but it's really making that connection. And is so important. There's one thing when it comes to politicians. One of my favorite speeches is that JFK's speech at Rice University when he says, we have to go to the moon not because it's so easy, but because it's hard. But before he goes to that, before he says that, he's speaking at Rice University, and before he talks about a Rice game, like a Rice football game. So he brings it down. I mean, he basically says, I'm here, and I know about your game. And actually, I don't remember if Rice won or not. But the fact is, he totally grants it, and there's a cheer of applause. And so and it's sort of lost in a soundtrack. So when you listen to the speech and you listen to the moon parts, you are kind of wondering, what are people saying? Why are people cheering? And then when you listen closely, it's because he mentions that game. And so that's what he did. He just personalized it. Or just elevate someone, tell a local story that other people can relate to in your audience, and I think people will remember you.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's about building trust and familiarity, right? Mm-hmm. So that connectivity with their game is what does that. So you mentioned AI. How do you think AI is going to change storytelling? I mean, right now you're looking for ideas and sharing those and expanding those. How is AI going to change that, or is it not?
No, it will. I think it's going to change. It's going to change storytelling. We talked about it. I mean, the way I sort of personify AI is kind of like electricity. It's like we are not going back to candles and kerosene, and I think we are going through a similar step change that's happening. I think on the nonfiction side, it's definitely people are going to be using it sort of to generate ideas, and some have, some with success and some with less. You will see it on the nonfiction side in sort of journalism, people are going to be using it to to summarize large amounts of information, to get a quick start on something, or when there's a long transcript, you can sort of use that today, sort of to transcribe it. That said, I still believe it's going to be a tool that is going to allow us to move faster, but you will still need the human input, because you know what? Despite all of this AI and all of this new content that's going to be generated, we still have only 24 hours in a day.
Yes.
So you'll need a great content to really break through. And that might be AI or it might be human. I don't know yet.
We talk in our business about AI being the co-pilot to creativity, right?
I totally agree.
It's a tool that allows us to do what we do and amplify it more efficiently. Last question. As DJ Disco Check, how do you tell a story with music?
That's really different, because in that sense, when you play a set, you have immediate feedback, so you can feel the vibe. So you spend a couple of hours at home actually to planning the story, selecting the records, and that's actually the fun part. But when you play, you have to listen to your audience. So always listen to your audience, and you have to respond to it. So it's kind of like super storytelling, because in the story, you just guess what the people will like. But in this sense, you really have to respond to the room, because if you don't, they just walk away.
That's it. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
And thank you.